November 121 Mike, your turn. Taxi 111.
Hi, I'm Mike Thompson, and welcome to 121 Point Mike. This video is going to talk about traffic patterns. A traffic pattern is a standard rectangular path that the aircraft follows when they're in the vicinity of an airport. The purpose, of course, is safety. Everyone knows what to do and expects everyone else to follow suit. On takeoff, you're flying the upwind or departure leg. You did take off into the wind, didn't you? Towered airports will always have you take off into the wind, unless there's some reason not to, and there usually isn't. It's at the non-towered airports that you have to be extra careful, because people will just kind of go whichever way they want sometimes, and create a collision hazard for everybody else. This is why you need to get the weather before you taxi. You need to know which runway to use, among other things. So you took off on the upwind leg, but now you want to go back and land to the runway. So what do? Well, usually you turn left, just like in NASCAR. The standard traffic pattern is flown with left turns, and every pilot knows this. There are exceptions, of course, and I'll get to those in just a bit. Upon making your first left turn, you're going to fly the crosswind leg for a few seconds. It's called the crosswind leg because the wind is coming across you from the right, isn't it? If you took off downwind like a moron and made a left turn, well, then the wind would be coming from your left. But it's not now, is it? Okay, so you're going to fly maybe a mile away from the runway, crosswind, and you'll make your next left turn onto the downwind leg. It's probably obvious why it's called the downwind leg, but this leg is where good landing prep starts. Well, I suppose you could argue that good landings start in the briefing room. Of course, then someone else could probably argue that good landings start with good parenting and teaching kids responsibility and all that. But on downwind, you will start setting up for landing. By the way, how high are you on downwind? You're at traffic pattern altitude, that's how high. What is traffic pattern altitude? Well, for propeller planes, it's typically 1,000 feet above the ground, give or take an inch. Your instructor will tell you, or you can ask the locals too. The oldest guy in the lawn chair with the handheld comm is probably the guy to ask. So on downwind, you're at abeam your touchdown point, which is probably going to be the 1,000-foot marks for the purposes of your training. You'll begin to slow down and lower your first notch of flaps. If you've had retractable gear, which you probably don't because you're just learning to fly, then you'd put them down now as well. If you're the only one in the pattern, you'll continue on downwind until the runway's about, 45 degrees behind you to the left. Then you make your third left turn onto the base leg. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that name either. That's just what it's called. Now, we don't call it a crosswind leg because we have to avoid confusion with the crosswind leg that you just flew 45 seconds ago. So we call it the base leg. So you're on a left base for the runway. This is where you'll add your second notch of flaps and continue to slow down. Your last left turn is final. Once you're on final, you drop your flaps yet again and you slow down to your final approach speed. And then there's the runway. That's where the traffic pattern ends. That's your standard left-hand traffic pattern. But then there are right-hand patterns as well. And how do you know? On a chart, you will see RP and a runway number if that runway has a right pattern. You'll also see the segmented circle when you fly over the field. The little L's on the ground indicate the base leg of the pattern. Let's look at some examples, because you're going to be asked this for a test, for sure. You will also encounter right patterns for parallel runways. The runway on the right will use a right pattern when both runways are in use. Turning right from a right runway kind of keeps you from being in the wrong spot and bumping into the other guy. If there are obstructions, like mountains or something, then right patterns might be in order. Or if you have a community that doesn't love the sound of aircraft, you might make right turns. Okay, so this covers the shapes of patterns, but how do you get in or out of them? That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked. There are standard ways to enter and exit that everyone in the pattern knows kind of what to expect. So when you depart the pattern, especially at a non-towered airport, you'll either fly straight out or you'll turn left twice to get where you need to go if you're going the opposite direction. Just do what people expect so you don't cause an accident. At towered airports, they might have you turn right, and you can ask for that, but expect to go left unless you're told otherwise. Okay, so now you've been out flying and you need to land. How do you get back? The standard way to enter a traffic pattern is on a downwind at 45 degrees. So if you're coming in from the downwind side, then you'll look for traffic, announce your intentions, and you'll turn 45 degrees to enter the downwind. This is for non-towered airports. A towered airport will probably just tell you what they want you to do, but follow standard procedures unless you're told otherwise. If you're on this side coming in, and you've got to get to this side because we want to make standard left-hand traffic, what you can do is overfly midfield at about 500 feet above pattern altitude. You're going to look, you can do two things. The safer option, of course, is, let me erase all this. The safer option is to fly 500 feet above pattern altitude, cross, make a right-hand teardrop back to enter on this 45 downwind, right? And then go that way, like this. The second option, which I think is slightly less safe, of course, is to simply look for traffic and turn downwind. Option 1 is far better than option 2, in my opinion. Now, at towered airports, a lot of times they'll have you fly straight in for final approaches, especially if they aren't busy. But large airports, they're always busy, and you can bet that there's a traffic pattern they're working with. Let's look at how the traffic here is flowing at DFW. So you can see here at Dallas-Fort Worth, all the aircraft on the ground. Here's American 2581. They flew a downwind, didn't they? A left downwind for runway, this is 35 left, I believe, over here. Or 36, I think maybe 36 left's on this side of the airport. Let's see here. Yeah, 1836. So this is 36 left. This runway here is being used for arrivals as well, and this is a center. So this would be a 35 center. So let's zoom out here and kind of watch the traffic and how it's flowing here. SkyWest 3129 is on final for 35 center. UPS 2798 is following him. SkyWest, you can see his downwind over here. And then he turned base and final. American 2439 flew his downwind. He's now turning base, and then he'll turn final to land behind American 2581. Dallas-Fort Worth, remember I mentioned, is the airport that's got 5 runways with exactly the same headings, but because they only have L, C, and R letters to denote runway positions, they had to cheat and use 18 and 17 for some of their designations. So like over here, you've got 35 right, here's 35 center and 35 left. Over here is 36 right and left, even though they have all exactly the same headings. But anyway, you can see here that at large airports, just like small airports, there is a traffic pattern in place. Of course, at Dallas-Fort Worth, the traffic pattern is measured in miles, but there is certainly a traffic pattern in place. And since they have parallel runways, you can see the planes that are over here on the left-hand patterns use the left-hand runways. The planes over on the right-hand patterns use the right-hand runways. Here we go, Envoy 4181 is, they're about to turn, and they're going to turn final here and follow American 2331. So, traffic patterns. At non-towered airports, you'll have to announce your position when you're taking off, on downwind, when you're turning base, turning final, and when you're clear of the runway. You basically do that also at a Class D airport because they don't have radar, and so you don't ever want to get in trouble for over-communicating, and no one does. Poor communication is the #1 problem. Always, always communicate, especially with your wife. Neither of you knows what the other's thinking anyway. Now, airports with radar will be tracking all the aircraft and know where you are, but I still announce my turn to final if no one else is talking. Of course, the controller might also tell you when to report, so that's when you'll call them. Downwind and bases are popular places. Well, all right. I think you kind of know what patterns look like now, how to identify them, how to fly them, and how to communicate with them. Traffic patterns are rectangles in the vicinity of an airport that start with the runway and end with the runway. The rectangles are aligned such that one of the long legs is the runway. You'll typically make left turns and fly at 1,000 feet altitude. I think you pretty much now know what you need for traffic patterns on your FAA exam. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free and you'll be notified when the next video is out. And stay with me on 121 Point Mike.